Hi pals, it's me, Artie, they're in pronouns only, and
why is it always so hard?
my video this week is talking about a particular episode of Private Practice. I have been binge watching Private Practice since I caught up with Grey's Anatomy a couple of weeks ago, week ago or so. I'm on the very last season of it now, and I don't know what I'm going to do with myself when it's done. What else am I going to spend my time watching? I don't know. However, there has been quite a few very interesting little patients and medical things, so I may make a few more of these videos if anybody in particular is enjoying Private Practice or is just interested in hearing what I have to say and what I think about how they've written and how they've portrayed these different plot lines. So today's quite a wild one. The basic premise is Addison, from technically very early in Grey's Anatomy, got a spin-off show called Private Practice where they're kind of just basically GPs, but also they all have certain specialist skills. So like she's obviously the baby and pregnancy person. This was very early in season 1 as well, which is why I was a little bit shocked at how kind of out there some of this plot was. A lot of the plot outside of this particular medical case is still building the show up, as I think it was literally episode 4, and we're still sort of getting to know all the different characters, at least the ones who were there at the start. So the patient arrives just through their lift, because their GP practice is on a floor of a tall building. What the fuck are they called? I've forgotten. But she comes out of the elevator onto their floor. She's looking very thin and not looking particularly pregnant. And she doesn't look particularly like she's just escaped from a psych ward either. She has a hospital band on. She arrives, she turns up because she saw one of the other series regulars, Sam Bennett, did a TV appearance earlier in the episode. She saw his appearance and basically comes to their practice to find him in particular, but also hoping maybe that generally the people he's working with are similar to what he's saying that he is like. She collapses into his arms and he notices that she is bleeding from the arm, like she's ripped out a cannula. Addison rocks up as well. Sam asks her, did you walk straight out of a hospital? The patient responds, we had to get out of there. Addison says, we? She's like, what do you mean we? And then that's when she discloses that she's actually also pregnant, and says they were trying to kill us. The next scene, they have her on a bed, and then she also says, I saw you on TV talking about listening to the patient. Was that just TV crap? And Sam says, no, I meant it. So you were saying the hospital is trying to kill you. And she says, everything they do just makes me sicker. Addison then asks, how far along are you? And she says 5 months. I know I look thin, but I am eating, I am. I've always had stomach stuff, this pain, no one can figure out what's wrong. I'm doing what you said, listening to my body, but nobody believes me. And minus the being super skinny and pregnant parts, this felt very familiar to me. Sam wants the name of the hospital that she came from, and the doctors that she sees, but she won't give him those details. And she's also scribbled over her hospital band, so nobody can read it. Sam says to Naomi, who is was she his ex-wife yet? Or were they still going through separation? I don't know. Either way, probably ex. It's messy. His ex says, no, he says to his ex, she won't give us any of her information. She's afraid we're going to send her back. So then his ex replies saying, you're damn right we're sending her back. Then Addison is the only one really who argues to keep her there and to do some tests. Sam also okays this until they find out where she actually did come from. Pretty much the whole episode, everyone but Addison is trying to get rid of this patient. Her name was Rebecca, but they call her Jane Doe because she's hiding all this information to try and protect herself and her baby. But yeah, everyone's trying to offload her back to where it is she came from, that she's just some kind of crazy or problem patient, and why would she like rip out her cannula and run away from a hospital, and they think she's a liar and all that sort of thing. Dell checked on the patient and she's having contraction like pains, and then gets Addison and she goes back in there. The fetal weight is low for 5 months, but the heartbeat is present and strong. Nobody thought I could get pregnant, the patient says. My body has been messed up my whole life. This baby's a miracle. Total cliche, right? Addison and the patient are like starting to build a rapport in this sort of moment as they just continue chatting about things. Charlotte King then rocks up from the local hospital because that's where the patient came from. Her name is Rebecca. Charlotte says that she'll arrange transport for the patient, but Addison continues to advocate for Rebecca. She wanted to come here, she wants to stay here, we are keeping her, she says. Charlotte discloses some details, like that she was a 5150, so she's on involuntary psychiatric hold. Addison doesn't think she's crazy. Everyone thinks she has Munchausen's. Even Sam sort of decides, oh no, she must definitely be fucking crazy. Ignore everything that I was listening to, like her saying, and you know, about all of this physical pain she's in. Definitely crazy. Apparently Rebecca has been in and out of psych wards since she was around 18. We don't know how long that really has been. I don't think her current age is ever mentioned in the episode. She doesn't look particularly old, so that could be anything from like 10 years to like 1. She's been in and out of these psych wards and complaining of stomach problems, joint pains, other vague symptoms. And if you're new here, I talk a lot about how fucking vague a lot of chronic health conditions can be when it comes to especially like initial symptoms. And it's a particularly common and pretty well known thing of a lot of autoimmune conditions. For both of my main ones, I say main because they're the ones that give me the most grief in my entire life, Crohn's and Takayasu's, they both have extremely similar, overlapping, vague initial symptoms. Things like fatigue, malaise, sweating, night sweats, random pains anywhere, fevers, like all sorts of shit that's really vague and could just be the flu, you know, like, but they're like the initial warning signs for a lot of autoimmune conditions. You just have to work out which one. Wow. Instead of labeling it as IBS, or you're just fat. However, they say that her tests don't back her up. My questions are, what fucking tests have they done? What tests have been conducted on her, especially if she was like locked away for the first time from 18 years old? Also, side note, even though I will be ridiculing Charlotte a lot in this video, I fucking love her. She is baby girl. I love her so much. She is the most beautiful, gorgeous bitch with one of my most like favorite complex character arcs. I love her so much. However, she is wrong in this in this episode. Again, everyone but Addison can't wait to get rid of her. Can't wait to get rid of this poor patient, Rebecca. Everyone is convinced it's Munchausen's. Addison suggests that they, it's just one psych person. I'm just so into this show now, I forget that Sheldon wasn't there at the start. Addison suggests that they get their psych, Violet, to conduct another psychiatric examination, I guess. Especially while she's at the practice. Addison has also said that they can't move her anyway because it's still having contractions, so moving her would be too risky for the baby. Naomi keeps on that like she has a long documented history of mental health problems, and like my question is, you know, what happens if you're misdiagnosed as crazy or hysterical instead of a physical health issue at the start? Then what? And also, just because someone's crazy doesn't mean that they're making up physical health conditions. If she's been saying the same thing as well for a long time. Like, so Addison does convince Naomi to let Violet do the psych evaluation. Rebecca is really upset, which is really fair. You know, she has had a lot of really bad experiences because she keeps being pigeonholed into a psych diagnosis. But she doesn't understand that also Addison is doing this so that she can continue to help her with like physical health reasons, trying to find what the fuck is going on. Rebecca says, if no one can figure out what was wrong with me, they'll keep thinking I'm crazy and take my baby away from me. Violet then says, we will do everything possible to keep that from happening. Addison also says, but we need you to help us. So then they are like basically just gently encourage her into doing the psych evaluation. Violet decides Rebecca doesn't really fit the profile of Munchausen's. Like, how many people has she seen? And they're all like, yeah, she probably has Munchausen's. And like, Violet's like, doesn't really make sense, to be honest. Rebecca starts feeling her baby moving and is really excited, and she wants Addison to come and feel. But then Charlotte arrives with Rebecca's mother, who has medical power of attorney to take Rebecca back to the psych ward. Her mum is being like the worst here, honestly, the worst. She basically starts humiliating Rebecca by trying to convince everybody she's crazy and making it up, which I don't think I can really understand or get on board with. She starts saying, you know, she starves or she eat God knows what to get sick, or she gets to another hospital until they work out what's going on. Then she also gets some test results back, and everyone's concerned that they show that she has, well, supposedly she hasn't eaten in days. Naomi then says she lied. She has been making herself sick. This is where Addison now starts thinking that Rebecca was lying to her. Yeah, I can't really understand from the point of view of a parent whose kid has always been unwell and is still unwell as an adult, is carrying your grandchild as well. Like, why don't you believe her? Why aren't you advocating for her to get help or to see another doctor that will do more or proper fucking tests? Because like I said, they haven't mentioned any tests they've done on her or that have been done in the past. The only test I know they've done on her so far is the ones that they've done here, and it's literally just the one that decides whether you're malnourished or not, I'm pretty sure. Actually, that's even a thing. I'm not sure about that. Like, what is the blood test that says that you haven't eaten? And that's what makes everybody think you've not eaten, rather than other possible reasons for why it looks like you're malnourished. Like, there's other ways of being malnourished besides either not eating or making yourself throw up. You know, this is like the episode of House about Takayasu's, where I was just so confused by what all the like medical doctors and shit were saying, and I don't know how anything happened in that episode. Like, and then suddenly half his brain had to be removed, and that was it. Like, I feel the same way about this episode. Basically, everyone watches this girl leave. Sam stops them leaving to try and convince them to like give them more time to conduct some more tests. He suddenly, I don't know, something in him just suddenly changes, and he's like, you know what, I can help. I believe her now. I thought you were a liar, but now I believe you. So yeah, he does this whole big speech about how Rebecca came here because she thought that they were different, all the staff there were different to everywhere else she's been, and that they were better. And I'm like, yeah, okay, so fucking behave that way. You're like ready to get rid of this poor fucking woman, but she came to you because you were talking about patient first, patient-centred, believe patients. Who does that sound like? Oh yeah, the NHS. The mum says that they have an hour. Sam is like the general practitioner, but he also has like a specialist area of cardiology. So he's like basically the right kind of person to be there involved in this, at least, because you know that's what GPs are supposed to do. They're supposed to be conducting all of those initial tests and referring you to the right departments for further testing and full diagnosis. Like, that's basically what his job is. So I'm glad you're doing your job, Sam. And then also Addison is like helping, but she's more pregnancy, baby, doctor surgeon person. Sam is now the one like spearheading the whole thing, and he believes that they can find something even in like just an hour. I'm like, if you know what you're fucking doing, then sure. They looked at all of her files but couldn't work it out, and then they decide, thanks to Addison again, everyone's looking, by the way, it's not just the two of them, everyone's actually trying to help and chip in. Addison suggested basically just throw out all the files and all of the preconceptions of this woman, and go by everything that Rebecca has told them in person in like the time she's been there, take it as truth and go from there. So difficult, I know. Sam says, oh, which would mean the hospital missed something right at the start. Yeah, well done. Violet says, then she's saddled with a psych diagnosis. The doctors would assume her worsening symptoms are worsening of her mental illness. Pete chips in, but that could mean a worsening of the physical illness. Addison then jumps in as well. What's the missing illness that started it all? Naomi says, one that makes her feel stomach spasms and pain after she eats. Sam says, associated with occasional joint pains and fevers. Pete says as well, and comes and goes in cycles. Sam says, did they ever get a GI camera study? They also don't even call it a colonoscopy or anything. Like, there's a few different kinds of those studies. Usually it's a colonoscopy that's best for diagnosing Crohn's and colitis, and then also a small bowel MRI. In the UK anyway, I guess America could be a bit different. The way you guys even conduct colonoscopies is different to here. We are awake, for a start. We are awake when that pipes up our butt. And we have to take the most disgusting bowel prep for like several days, hours beforehand, whereas you guys drink a bottle of magnesium, what the fuck ever, go to fucking sleep, then you wake up like, oh, can I have a cheeseburger? Like, Naomi then says, I didn't see it in her records. Violet says, how will that help? Because she's the psych, so... This is the weird thing. Both the psychiatrists both seem to have, like, medical school training. I don't think you need medical school training to be as... Maybe you do for a psychiatrist. I don't know. Is that the case? But also then sometimes they are very like stupid. They're very much like, I don't know anything about being a body doctor. So, where were you for those 10 years or however fucking long? Alison then responds with, the camera could get to places in Rebecca's body that previous workups couldn't have seen. It's a new procedure. I think they said it's a newish procedure, and that was wild to me because like, this is an early 2000s show, like what, around 2010ish, depending on what season. That was wild to me. I was like, what do you mean they haven't had colonoscopies for like 30 or more years? I thought, like, I'm sure they've been around longer than that, but okay. Sam then says if she had an occult form of an autoimmune disease, by the way, occult just means hidden. I've never heard or seen anyone say this, and I had to Google it. I was like, what does he mean? What does occult mean? Occult form of an autoimmune disease. There's no magic here. There's no witchcraft, unfortunately. Maybe a curse on my bowels. Addison then also says, affecting deep sections of intestines. Pete says it would flare up in times of stress, like during pregnancy. Naomi says, which would mean she wouldn't absorb nutrients. They obviously went straight to, she's not eating, she's throwing up, because they all knew by that point she's been in a fucking psych ward. Any other patient, they wouldn't just assume that. Like, what the fuck? And then Addison says and explains why. She says she's eating, but her tests don't. And the patient has already been taken away back to the hospital. Well done, guys. They ask Charlotte when they are at the hospital to run some tests on Rebecca. Charlotte is initially against the idea, but eventually trusts them and says that she wants to help the girl more than she wants the credit for any of this, although she does care about the credit too, but mostly she wants to help the patient, which is one of the reasons why I love her so much. Ready to break the fucking rules. And then results time. She has Crohn's disease. They say to her, you're eating and it was making you sick. And she says, so you believe me? And Addison says, I believe you. And then the patient cries of joy. Like, finally, someone's found something wrong with her, physically, and they can do something about it. Her mum apologises to her. Wild though. Like, maybe you should have tried to help her get some fucking answers rather than continually blame her, ostracise her, humiliate her in front of any doctors, and like literally just let her be and stay locked up. Like, bro, the fuck, bit late. She forgave her right away, and I was like, no, if my mother had done that to me, I don't know if I could forgive her. So yeah, that was basically the gist of it. It's never mentioned any of the other tests that were conducted either before she arrived or when they're there. They literally don't mention a single fucking test besides whatever one they're talking about that they think means she's starving herself or throwing up. Don't know what that test is supposed to be, you know, whether that's a urine test or a blood test. I have no idea. I'm assuming a blood test. You know, did they check inflammation in her blood or her stool? Like, ever? Did anyone ever do that? Considering she's had stomach stuff going on her whole life? No one. Oh yeah, same. Between my first visit about my bowels and then the second, I went from an IBS diagnosis, 6 years later, it's fucking Crohn's disease. Probably could have caught it earlier, you know, if someone had bothered to do any tests. But like, we don't know on the show what tests were actually done. If they did do those tests, they came back either normal or like barely abnormal, and that can happen at times. It's not super common, but does happen. The only symptoms she really discussed were pain after eating, stomach cramps, fevers, like occasionally joint pain. She says those things like, I've had stomach stuff my whole life. Doesn't specifically mention anything about bowel movements, which, you know, if she's also not had irregular bowel movements, that could also be part of why the diagnosis might have been missed initially, as it's not typical of Crohn's. And also if she is malnourished, slash hasn't absorbed her nutrients when she says she's been eating, you know, maybe she's not even really able to pass stool at all because she's so malnourished that she might be extremely constipated. Who knows? Just like might not be enough food actually going through her digestive tract, or there could even possibly be a blockage somewhere in her colon that could be preventing her from food going all the way through, basically, and that could be why everyone thinks she's making herself sick. She might be vomiting because of some of these elements as well, but it's not super clear either if she's been vomiting. You know, it's a very vague show. They could have asked these questions, but they don't, so no wonder why everyone keeps calling it vague. Nobody's asking the appropriate questions you should be asking when someone has like stomach pains and is showing as malnourished. Maybe ask a few other questions. But of course, when I was first watching this, I did genuinely think, I was like, oh, she's got like an IBD, she's got Crohn's. And it was wild to me that she had been so like badly misdiagnosed, that she was on a psych ward or like in another psychiatric hold and has been through those repeatedly. And as well, like generally we know mental health services are not really great or any good at catering to physical health issues to patients, which also probably worsen the idea that, you know, they think she's mentally ill because they're not treating her appropriately. She was clearly very distressed when people were being skeptical or when her mum was confronting her / humiliating her in front of these new doctors, which I feel like with a lot of medical professionals could very easily add to their like list of evidence for her needing psychiatric help over physical help. Even though this is such a normal response to not being listened to for however many years. I mean, yeah, we don't know how old she is, but she said she's had this issue basically her whole life. But again, this all kind of comes back to the idea that women are hysterical, or if someone's not showing super obvious signs of a physical ailment, then they're hysterical, they're crazy. On the NHS website, there is an example story of how care should and shouldn't go for IBD patients, going from like literally the very start, initial experience before they're even diagnosed, like how not to deal with an IBD patient before diagnosis. And it's practically what happened to me. Like almost like exactly what happened to me. You know, she was repeatedly brushed off by her GP as just stressed and told it was IBS, when stress can worsen Crohn's symptoms as well, as we were talking about in this episode. And no tests were conducted for this imaginary patient at all. Same for me the first time I went about stomach problems, and it was all just put down to her mental health and being stressed. Whereas if anything, she was more likely stressed because she was shitting uncontrollably. It's quite stressful worrying you might shit yourself in public all the time. I don't know if you guys know that, but it's stressful. It's also quite stressful being ignored by doctors, but you know all about that because I've made loads of videos about it.
Go watch my other videos.
And then there's this other article, neurodiversity I don't know how to pronounce this, paradigm, what the fuck? An abolition of psychiatric incarceration. There is a case about a woman, Leah Ash, with Crohn's disease being basically incarcerated within the psychiatric system, and how the care they provided there was nothing more than punishment, and they neglected her physical health conditions. She documented it in full from iatrogenic harm to iatrogenic violence. Guys, I know these are academic texts, but can you not? Corruption and the end of medicine. Similarly to Rebecca in the episode of Private Practice, Leah Ash's health is mischaracterized as an eating disorder, so a mental illness, rather than what it was, Crohn's disease. A quote I've taken from it says, after being admitted to a hospital for a chronic illness, a single medical note made by a nurse who confused explosions of diarrhea for an episode of bulimic vomiting transformed the course of Ash's treatment. They basically just wouldn't let her eat real food. They were force feeding her, and denied her treatment for her chronic illness. She experienced sepsis, hospital-acquired pneumonia, and a cardiac arrest. The full article is behind a paywall, but she has done a lecture on it, and it was intended to be like a spoken lecture rather than something you read. So you can watch the spoken YouTube version for free, and it will be in the link of my description. But that's kind of the main bit that was relevant to this video. I'm not sure on the years exactly that this happened to Leah Ash, but they weren't so long ago, and it was in the UK. This is still happening quite regularly for varying physical health conditions. There can be a point for Crohn's patients in severe flare-up with Crohn's that, historically it's been hard to control. It can cause a mental impact which does impact your ability to eat, and it might look like an eating disorder, but it's just medical trauma. Basically, it's just trauma from having Crohn's disease so severe. But also, as soon as a professional deems that the case, then a lot of other professionals in the team, as well as that professional, may no longer take the physical issues seriously and continue to just say things like, well, just eat. Unfortunately, I know people this has happened to as well. So whilst there is a very real and very horrible mental impact from just having Crohn's disease, even if you remove the medical negligence and neglect from the equation, if you're just talking about the experience of having Crohn's disease, it can be quite fucking traumatizing, and it can put you off eating food ever. But unfortunately, like I said, that can also be used as a way of just not bothering to treat a patient properly anymore. One example as well of other physical health issues leading to psych holds is in 2021, a man called Thane with severe ME as well as MCAS admitted himself to hospital in America, hoping for help to get nutrition. As he was unable to eat from both ME as well as his MCAS, he needed help. And instead of helping him, he was put on a psychiatric hold. Now, I will say, I haven't heard many stories like this in the UK, but I don't think that means that it doesn't happen often. I think it means it's just not particularly well reported on. Or they might be in similar situations to the character from this episode. Rebecca's mum wasn't really supportive of her and was part of the reason why she was continually being held in psychiatric wards instead of getting help for her physical health condition. So if you have a lack of support from people around you, you really don't have much power or autonomy in what is going to happen to you. And if you are in that sort of very unfortunate situation, that can mean that that person is more likely to not come out of a psychiatric ward, not be able to retain their previous autonomy, and possibly even die in a psychiatric ward. I don't think that's new at all. And it often requires a lot of outside support for patients with physical illnesses who have been wrongly put on psych holds or put in psychiatric wards, who have been mistaken as someone with a mental illness that's actually, that they, have deemed relevant to the physical symptoms being presented and not like a separate thing. It takes a lot of support for those people to be taken seriously again, and for people to be able to get out of psychiatric wards or psych holds. And even then, all of this as well will remain on somebody's medical file. So they may continue to struggle being taken seriously by their current / previous team or any other teams they may go to for help, because if they do look at their past, they might blow that person off, like what almost happened to Rebecca in private practice. Things like that are incredibly hard / impossible to remove from a medical file, like particularly in the UK. I don't really know about anywhere else, but much of the time you can ask to get some things amended, but that has to kind of be based on fact and if you've got evidence. But it does seem impossible to rare to actually get original notes or things like this removed from your file. So initially I wanted to talk about this episode because, well, it was about Crohn's for one, and I have Crohn's. And this was particularly interesting, to put it lightly, a plot line for a patient with Crohn's. And I just wanted to share my thoughts on that episode and my reactions. But this also kind of turned into a little bit of an awareness video as well. I'm not an expert on abolition by any means, but I do believe that psych wards and the like are basically prisons and rarely help people. I'm not going to say that they never help anyone, as it is nuanced based on individual experiences, as well as how each institution is run, and what kind of staff work there. But the overall systemic issues, how they were built and created, their history, like it all sucks and like still impacts people every day, plus the lack of education, again, for chronic illnesses, with medical staff, as in all the examples I have already talked about, like in the show, Leah Ash, Thane, they were all failed initially by all these people were initially failed by a doctor who practices, oh, hello, hello, Are you okay? Oh. All of these people were failed initially by a physician of some kind whose speciality slash generalization is physical health, which led them to being institutionalized somewhere down the line and putting their well-being in danger. You know, whilst I don't know how you can even begin to fix a system, so I was going to say broken, but we know it's made this way on purpose for particular reasons. But I don't know how you fix a system that's built to oppress people on purpose, particularly the medical institution. I believe they should be getting specific training and experience with chronically ill patients early in their careers and monitored by preferably chronically ill people. Maybe more staff will be less likely to insert their undereducated opinions onto suffering patients and more likely to look at the patient holistically, believe them, and actually read the chart rather than write whatever nonsense they deem appropriate for like a patient that they think is annoying or hard to deal with. So yeah, that's my video for this week. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this. Have you had a similar experience trying to get your diagnosis? Have you had that blamed on anxiety or depression, or that it's your fault, you're stressed, you have an eating disorder? Just do some CBT, just meditate, just have a cup of tea, have a bath.
All that shit.
And let me know if you would like to see me cover more of these cases from private practice in the future. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share my videos, and watch the other videos that I have uploaded on my channel. I think we're nearing like 600 videos on my channel at this point. I've been here a while. I've had a lot to say over the years. Don't shut up. Just yapping and yapping and yapping. But yeah, it really helps support my channel, and that is, yeah, kind of it. Sources will be linked in the description as usual. And I'm going to go eat my lunch and lay down directly in front of my AC unit because I am melting. I'm melting. I'm gonna see how far I can get into the last season of private practice. I'll see you next week. Bye.